Hello everyone! Mummified prehistoric tigers, ancient Roman armor, millennia-old weapons without a stain of rust. There are all sorts of things found under the ground or water. Today, we will tell you about the most impressive discoveries. And believe us, you will feel the urge to get a metal detector and start looking for an adventure. Let's get it on. Several years ago, a mammoth tusk hunter was on his way through the ancient caves of Siberia. He never found the tusks, but he came across a tiny cave lion cub. Scientists immediately began to study the cub. They gave him the sweet nickname of Sparta and learned that the lion cub died 28,000 years ago. Nevertheless, it's incredibly well preserved. You can see fur and even whiskers intact. By the way, this is not the only story like that. A little earlier, in similar caves, another lion cub was found, which died about 44,000 years ago. There's only one question. How is this possible? Scientists say that it's all because of the cold and airless environment in the cave. This is why the bodies of the predators are so well mummified. An employee of the National Gallery in Australia once walked through the empty halls of the museum during a lockdown. He was checking the canvases for cracks and irregularities with a flashlight. And you know what? Under a famous painting by Frederick McCubbin, he suddenly found another painting. And the most amazing thing is that it was considered missing for the last 100 years. There is only one problem though. The artist painted the new picture on top of the old one, so it's definitely not possible to recover it. A legend says that back in 1934, the famous French racer René Dreyfus lost a poker game to a Swiss. He had no money with him though, so he couldn't find anything better than to pay his debt with an excellent Type 22 Bugatti. Well, then something went wrong, and the car ended up at the bottom of Lake Maggiore, located right on the border between Italy and Switzerland. For a long time, locals passed this legend from mouth to mouth, not really believing it was real, until in 2009, the legendary car was actually lifted from the bottom of the lake, and it preserved quite well. One Chinese fisherman from Chongqing once went fishing as usual, but instead of carp fish, he caught a giant salamander, weighing 110 pounds and measuring 5 feet long. Actually, this animal is considered critically endangered, so the chance of seeing it is about 1 in a million. But the fisherman was lucky. According to experts, his catch is at least 200 years old. The giant salamander, of course, was delivered to scientists for research. Despite the fact that you can get a fortune for it on the black market, poachers capture the few remaining salamanders because they're highly valued by proponents of traditional medicine. Today, you never know what can turn into a meme, maybe a random photo taken on the street, or a cool archaeological find. Here's the story. Last spring, archaeologists found an ancient mask made of pure gold in China. You might wonder what's so unusual about that, but check out the shape of this artifact. The Chinese liked it so much that they arranged a challenge on TikTok. Some users just tried a virtual mask on, some added funny images to it, and some even figured out how to cut this mask out of paper. Perhaps this is the most unusual trend we've ever seen. One day in the 80s, a kid from Chicago, Rob Roble, gave his friend a book about treasures for his birthday. And what do you think? The book shared not just a story, but real clues for finding the treasure. Of course, the friends immediately started looking for it. It may sound incredible, but the quest turned out to be real. Having solved all of the riddles, the friends headed to the local Grant Park, and after a while, they found a transparent box under the ground, and inside it, a ceramic vessel with a key. According to the rules of the game, the key had to be handed over to the author of the book, Byron Price. That is what the friends did. In exchange for it, they got a real emerald worth about $1,000. Just think of it. This locomotive has been hidden under the mud for over 100 years. Yes, that's right. This story happened in New Zealand. The locomotive first hit the tracks in 1885 and did its job perfectly for several decades. And then the First World War began. The prices for scrap metal dropped, and the trains were simply dumped into the rivers so that they would serve as something like a dam. This locomotive stayed at the bottom of the river for more than a century, and they retrieved it only last year. If you don't use a knife for a while and don't keep it in order, it will rust, right? Turns out that there are some marvelous exceptions to this rule. In China, they unearthed the sharp sword of Gujian, about 2,500 years old. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that there is no corrosion or darkening on it, and it is as sharp as a newly made knife. How is this possible? We know the sword was forged from bronze with a high content of copper and sulfur and a low content of iron and lead. Most likely, this secret composition helped the weapon stay in excellent condition for millennia. Until recently, scientists believed that there are no living organisms under the Antarctic ice. Everything changed when, at the beginning of this year, a group of researchers drilled a well in a glacier and found a whole colony of unknown living creatures. These are filter organisms, similar to sponges and ascidians. Well, scientists have yet to find out how these organisms managed to get there and what they feed on. Antarctica is such a hard-to-reach region that we can expect to make many more discoveries there. But here's a completely unexpected one made by a New Zealand researcher. The thing is, the woman was cleaning her Antarctic house and suddenly found a real painting under the penguin excrements. Turned out that it was no less than 118 years old, and it was created by a British explorer. There is a whole community of people all over the world who love searching for stuff using a metal detector. Do you think this is just a bunch of crazy guys? Well, one man from Great Britain would laugh if he heard that. One day, he found a real helmet from the times of the Roman Empire, and then sold it at auction for more than £2 million sterling. So if you're looking for a new hobby, think about it. Do you know where pro divers swim? Well, for example, at abandoned military facilities. No, seriously. What you see are the flooded tunnels of the American Titan I missile silo, located in Washington state. During the Cold War, it was operational, and now it has become something of an underwater museum. And the most amazing thing is that diving here is legal. You just need to get permission from the local administration in advance and pass a short training before the dive. Think this is just a rusty chest? Not at all. What you see here is a real relic. It was accidentally discovered by American workers when they were dismantling a Robert E. Lee monument in Orlando. It was obvious that it was a time capsule, so the workers immediately handed it over to the city authorities, who opened it during the ceremony. Of course, many expected to see gold bars and something else of value inside, but the ancestors decided to put ordinary documents of that era in the chest. A 100-year-old yellowed newspaper issue, historical documents, and mini flags of the Confederation, and all of this has been preserved in excellent condition. A little less than 10 years ago, people in the UK and Northern Europe began to find something strange on the beaches. The identical rubber blocks about a century old. Each one bore a mysterious word in large print, Tiepitia. It has nothing to do with Jupiter either. This is the name of a remote village in Indonesia. By the way, a large rubber plant is located there. It would seem the mystery is solved then. The blocks were produced at a plant in Indonesia, and there is nothing supernatural here. But how did these plates end up literally in another part of the planet? Turned out that the rubber blocks were transported by a Japanese liner which sank during the First World War. See this unusual car covered with mussels and other shells? Believe it or not, this is a 1927 Chevrolet Coupe that sank in Georgian Bay nearly a century ago. The car belonged to one of the passengers and was parked right on the deck, where it has remained to this day. The divers managed to find this artifact quite recently, but they didn't lift the car to the surface. It seems to be doing just fine underwater. Do you think that archaeologists have already discovered everything there was to discover in Egypt? Not quite. For example, a few years ago, a large statue of the pharaoh was unearthed in the eastern part of Cairo. It weighed 4 tons, and its height was 26 feet. Scientists believe that the statue is about 3,000 years old, and it depicts Ramses II, one of the rulers of that time. The story of the American Herbert Humphreys, who devoted his whole life to finding treasures. Not simple ones, but those that once belonged to various celebrities and renowned historical figures. Humphreys was very successful in his business. For example, one day he went to the Bahamas and found an emerald cross there, which most likely belonged to Queen Isabella and sank in the 17th century together with the Spanish galleon Maravillas. Well, Herbert also found half a dozen gold bars and a lot of valuable coins as a nice bonus. It is no secret that in addition to the Eiffel Tower and the Champs-Élysées, Paris has much more hardcore attractions to offer. For example, these catacombs are a whole network of underground tunnels. Of course, most of them are closed to visitors. Do you think this could stop them though? A bunch of adrenaline seekers make their way into the tunnels through the sewer manholes almost every day. What could they be doing there though? In 2004, the police in the French capital figured out this secret. Turns out that the Parisians are watching independent films on a huge screen, and they throw parties underground. So very French of them. Have you ever dreamed of finding a message in a bottle on the beach? One married couple from Australia once found not just a simple romantic letter, but a real artifact. Walking along the beach, Kim and Tonya Illman saw a bottle in the sand and decided to pick it up so that they could later use it as an unusual piece of furniture. Who would have thought that inside they'd find a message in German which was written in 1889? Later, it turned out to be the oldest discovery of this kind. Well, unfortunately, there was nothing of romantic nature in the letter, just some boring document about the study of ocean waves. Hold on a second. Do you want to see some crazy stories from real life? Nothing dull, only action, only adventures, chases and fights, love confessions and sudden betrayals. Don't believe us? Well, follow the link and see for yourselves. Our animation channel Private Diary reveals the deepest secrets. Don't forget to subscribe.